Hello there. On the day Germany takes over the presidency of the European Union, Angela Merkel declares that they must be ready for a no-deal Brexit. Firstly, please subscribe and like this video to give my channel a boost. And I'm always uploading new content, so please do check back daily. Germany takes the reins of the 6-month rotating presidency of the European Union today from the Croatians, with Portugal next in line from the 1st of January. And the German Chancellor, Angela Merkel, has just told the German Federal Parliament, the Bundestag, that the Brexit negotiations could well end up in a no-deal outcome. To put it mildly, progress in the negotiations has been very limited, she said. I will continue to press for a good solution, but we in the EU and also in Germany must and should prepare for the event that an agreement is not reached after all. But that won't be the only thing on the German Chancellor's mind, as there's also the thorny problem of trying to keep the north and south regions of the EU together, as well as those who feel shafted by the EU's lack of assistance to them during this pandemic. And this is no easy task. As Euronews reports, right now the European Union needs leadership. And Angela Merkel, who has been in charge of the German powerhouse for the past 15 years, is not shying away from that role. She has continuously argued throughout this crisis that this is the most crucial moment in the Union's history. An economic crisis not seen for nearly 100 years, a health emergency that has not gone away. If it ends badly, not only would it tarnish her reputation, but some think it would lead the EU down a path from which it might not recover. And it's all based on the money. Who will ultimately pay for the economic recovery package required to rebuild the EU and Eurozone economies? And who will actually get the dosh? But whether the EU and Eurozone survive or not, and how they do it, is their concern. But it is worth considering where we in the UK would be right now had David Cameron, now stop hissing and behave, had David Cameron won through on the 23rd of June 2016. Because he would in all likelihood still be Prime Minister, and would be panting away at Merkel's side like some sort of obedient Labrador dog, asking if the UK could possibly help by supplying Brussels with more money. All the while being fully supported by a Remainer Parliament, wondering why we weren't yet propping up the euro as fully fledged members of the Eurozone. Then Cameron could have returned from his virtual meeting saying he'd once again reformed the EU, and it's only cost us squillions this time. But the truth is that Merkel of Germany and Macron of France would still be the ones with the ultimate power in the bloc. As indicated by the first face-to-face meeting between Merkel and Macron in months that took place a couple of days before Germany took the mantle of EU presidency. Because as long as Germany and France agree, then things get done in the European Union. So what do the Germans want to do with their presidency? Well, it's laid out in a document called Together for Europe's Recovery, Programme for Germany's Presidency of the Council of the European Union. And firstly, they want to deal with the pandemic, and then force the EU into ever deeper union across the board, with the EU developing even more ways to rob nation-states of their autonomy. Merkel also wants to strengthen the sovereignty of Europe's financial market. I wonder what that would have meant for the city in reality if we were still in the European Union. And then there's the burden sharing, where the document says, we are pushing for a reform that updates the regulations on responsibilities and solidarity, complies with humanitarian standards, avoids overburdening individual member states, by ensuring the just distribution of those seeking protection according to a fair responsibility sharing regime and effectively tackles secondary migration. That'll go down well with some member states one could name. Not. Also seems quite intent on closing down opinion when it says, crises such as COVID-19 pandemic give rise to a particular need for information among the population. We are therefore committed to strengthening the resilience of societies in dealing with false and misleading information on the internet in order to counteract the polarisation of public debates, also by external actors as well as targeted disinformation. I wonder who will decide what is false, misleading and targeted disinformation in the EU. And what would the EU be without its military plan? Using the pandemic as a cover, the German document says, we will place a particular focus on the long-term optimisation of the EU's external crisis prevention and response capabilities. This also comprises improved and more resilient structures and processes, as well as tangible projects in the area of common security and defence policy. At the same time, the EU's comprehensive security policy engagement as an anchor of stability must be maintained in view of the destabilising impact of COVID-19 on pre-existing conflicts. We must ensure that its operations and missions continue to be carried out to the greatest possible extent. Not sure what that means other than the EU needs more defence capability, a capability that can be used during a pandemic. I'm sure I read somewhere that it was the mass movement of troops after the First World War that led to the rapid spread of the Spanish flu. Anyway, the document also has a bit on Brexit where it says, we are driven by the vision of an ambitious, comprehensive partnership between the EU and the United Kingdom, which does justice to the depth and breadth of our relations. We will play an active role to ensure that the negotiations between the European Union and the United Kingdom on the basis of the jointly agreed political declaration and the negotiating mandate of the Commission reach a successful outcome. In this context, it goes without saying that our future partnership has to find a good balance between rights and obligations as well as fair conditions for competition. This requires parallel progress in the negotiations in all areas. At the same time, full implementation of the withdrawal agreement remains a key objective. Doesn't really reflect what she told the Bundestag today though, does it? So you do have to wonder how much else of the 25-page document is real, don't you? Having gone through the wide-ranging German 6-month plan, it sounds more like an unrealistic old Soviet-style 5-year plan. Well, Merkel does hail from the eastern side of the old Berlin Wall, doesn't she? And it's quite funny that no one has said, how on earth can the EU deal with all of this and the pandemic and Brexit, isn't it? But I think the biggest mountain Merkel will have to scale will be helping to sort out the budget for the EU 2021 to 2027 multi-annual financial framework and the pandemic rescue packages. And the EU 27 leaders are set to look at that knotty problem in a couple of weeks' time in an actual physical meeting, with indications so far that this will rumble on right up to the wire in December, because some member states are being asked to pay a lot more in and some may get a lot less out than they are used to receiving. All down to a combination of the economic fallout from the pandemic and that pesky and rather large Brexit hole in the money supply. But as the chair of the EU Committee on Budgets, Johan van Overtveld, said today, EU Council members have not come to an agreement over the budget in the last 2 years. He also said, For Parliament to give its consent to the next multi-annual financial framework 2021 to 2027, its programmes must be sufficiently endowed so that long-term priorities can be tackled, not just the immediate recovery needs. New sources of EU revenue, so-called own resources, are even more necessary now in order to cover the refinancing costs of the recovery instrument through means other than additional national contributions or a reduced EU budget that would punish next generations. New sources of EU revenue inevitably means direct taxes by the EU of the citizens on top of what they already pay, but bypassing their own country's treasuries. It's great when those in power can speak so easily of robbing people of their hard-earned dosh, isn't it? Anyway, that's for them. I'm just glad the UK isn't involved, so soaking up valuable time engaging with an organisation that would end up hampering a UK economic recovery by redistributing our money across the whole EU. Anyway, if you want to hear more from me, please don't forget to subscribe and also press that little bell, or you won't get any notifications. And if you want to see more of me, buy a mug with my mug on it. So what do you think about all of this? Please share and comment, and thank you for watching.